day. This is your instructor, Marshall James Tantik, in Intro to Research. So today I will be discussing the topic types and classification of research. Research is about using established methods to investigate a problem or question in detail with the aim of generating new knowledge about it. So in research, guys, there are already developed, diba, strategies, techniques, diba, and appropriate type of instruments in the researches that you will be conducting. So itong mga to ay na-validate, na-evaluate na bago inilathala, bago pinayagang gamitin in this type of researches. So hindi tayo pwedeng mag-imbento ng sarili natin basta-basta. Kasi baka hindi maging tama yung mga findings na magagather natin after we have conducted the study. Research is a vital tool for scientific advancement because it allows researchers to prove or refute hypotheses based on clearly defined parameters, environments, and assumptions. So last time we have discussed naman what is research and why research is important. It is to gather information, to prove the hypothesis, diba? To prove theories and make it to laws, diba? But para mangyari yun, we need these parameters. Ano ba yung mga limitations? Ano ba yung proper instruments? Tama ba yung settings? Kung saan natin ikakandak yung study? And akma ba yung assumptions na gagawin natin with all the variables na related doon sa research na kinakandak natin? So, bakit ba natin kailangan malaman yung types ng research and its focus? First, para mas makapagplano tayo maigi. So, kasama sa planning is yung proper conceptualization, di ba? Choosing of right techniques, right methodologies, di ba? Saan natin ikakandak yung study, sino yung mga variables, ay sino yung mga subjects, diba? Yung mga participants na dapat kalahok, ilang gaano katagal natin ikakandak yung study, diba? At saan yung lokal kung saan natin ikakandak yung study. So, ayun yung mga kasama sa planning. Next, para mas ma-utilize natin yung pinakaakmang methods na gagamitin natin when conducting the study. So, kaya kailangan natin malaman yung type ng research. And lastly, to better communicate your findings to other researchers. So, bakit natin kailangan gawin yon? Para ma-validate ng at makapagbigay ng opinion or recommendation yung other researchers based on the results of our studies. So, we need the help, diba, and insights of other experts in not necessarily in the research field but in that specific field, diba, na pinag-aaralan natin. Next, I will be discussing the basic types of research. So, ito yung pinaka-basic types: descriptive research, analytical research, applied research, fundamental research, quantitative research, qualitative research, conceptual research, and empirical research. So, I am sure that you are quite familiar now with the terms, diba? Kasi narinig nyo na to when you have conducted your researches before. Now, let us discuss the general types of research. So, first is descriptive versus analytical research. So, what are the difference between the two? So descriptive research includes surveys and fact-finding inquiries of different kinds. So the main characteristics of this method is that the researcher has no control over the variables. He can only report what was happening or what is happening. So descriptive studies also include attempts by researchers to discover causes even when they cannot control the variables. So 'di ba kapag for example nag-survey ang isang researcher, so that is a form of descriptive research. Now, yung mga na-survey niya or na-gather niyang data, wala siyang control doon kasi ayun yung pananaw, yung perspective o yung response ng mga participants, 'di ba? The researcher has no control. Hindi niya pwedeng galawin yung mga variables, 'di ba? Kung ano yung kalalabasan doon, the researcher will just report, 'di ba? Ayun yung sa descriptive research. Meanwhile, in analytical research, in this research, the researcher has to use facts or information that are already available and analyze this to make a critical evaluation of the material. It involves critical thinking skills and the evaluation of facts and information relative to the research being conducted. So here in analytical naman, there are already materials na available. Kumbaga, may mga references na available at based dun sa problem mo, sa problem ng research na kinakandak, mahanap sila ng mga available information na aakma dun sa problem nila. And ang ano nito is i-analyze nila yung mga available materials, available references para gamitin to explain their research, their study. So anong kaibahan nito? Anong pinakaiba ng dalawa? So sa descriptive, 'di ba? Kukuha sila ng data from the participants. Pero sa analytical, may naka-ready ng data, i-analyze na lang. Okay? Dito sa descriptive, wala silang control based sa responses. Pero sa analytical, depende kung ano yung gusto nilang kuning data that is beneficial to the study, diba? And appropriate to the problem. So yun. So may control sila kung ano yung gustong kalabasan nilang result. Sa descriptive, wala ka na masyadong iisipin, di ba? Wala ka na masyadong i-analyze. Pero sa analytical, purely analyzation. Next is applied research versus fundamental research. So in applied research, it refers to scientific study and research that seeks to solve a practical problems. So it aims at finding a solution for an immediate problem facing a society. So dito naman sa applied research, ito yung kinds ng study na kung saan nagkakandak talaga, okay, ina-apply nila yung theory in reality, in real life, na may application na nagaganap. So minsan experimental yung ganito or laboratory works. So kapag sinabi natin experimental, hindi lang naman yun sa science na nakikita nyong ginagawa sa laboratorio, pwede rin to sa social sciences like action research, diba? May application or social experiments like that. So pwede rin sa marketing, sa business, economics, at pwede sa education, of course. So but in fundamental research naman, it refers to scientific study and research that seeks to solve a practical problem. It mainly concerned with generalization and formulation of theory. So in fundamental naman guys, walang application na nagaganap. So ito yung mga types ng researchers na bumubuo ng policies or frameworks, diba? Or theories, diba? So based from the responses of their participants, so bubuo sila ng concept which will benefit the society. So kaiba with the applied research. So parang ganito. Sa applied research, ay sa fundamental research, we will make a blueprint or a theory about how electric motors works, diba? Diba? Electromagnetism, theory about electromagnetism, theories in physics. Meanwhile, in applied research, diba? Ito na yung parang investigatory project na gagawa sila ng product. For example, fans or motors, diba? So, ayun yung kaibahan nila. So, next is the difference between quantitative research and qualitative research. So, based pa lang sa kanilang titles, malalaman na natin kung ano ba yung difference nila. Okay. In quantitative, it refers to the systematic empirical investigation of any phenomena via statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. So, quantitative research is based on the measurement of quantity or amount. The objective of quantitative research is to develop and employ mathematical models, theories, or hypotheses pertaining to phenomena. So, ang quantitative research, guys, ang kinakandak lang natin dito is yung mga problem na pwede nating gamitan ng mathematical models or statistical tools. So, mostly, diba, if we, in education, yung mga surveys o kaya yung assessment tests, 'di ba? Pwede nating bilangin 'yon, yung scores, 'di ba? Yun yung sa quantitative in education. But in qualitative naman, it is a research dealing with phenomena that are difficult or impossible to quantify mathematically, such as beliefs, meanings, attributes, and symbols. If research aims at discovering the underlying motives and desires using in-depth interviews for the purpose. Other techniques of such research are word association tests, sentence completion tests. So in qualitative naman, guys, in education, di ba? It's all about interviews. Mostly, it's all about interviews. So ang ini-interview natin dito yung mga experiences, di ba? Perceptions, beliefs. Kaya siya nag-fall in qualitative research kasi hindi naman pwedeng bilangin, 'di ba? Yung kanilang beliefs, ang symbolism, 'di ba? Ang kanilang experiences. So talagang sinasabi 'yon through words. And ang instrument nito is mostly interview guides. It could be open or closed. So, next na tayo, conceptual research versus empirical research. So, in conceptual, it is a research methodology wherein research is conducted by observing and analyzing already present information on a given topic. Conceptual research doesn't involve conducting any practical experiments. It is generally used by philosophers and thinkers to develop new concepts or to reinterpret existing ones. So in conceptual, guys, there are already existing, diba, data. There are already existing references. So hindi na to exploratory. Meron ng pagbabasihan dito. And based from this existing data or references, the researchers will analyze it, make a conclusion, and form a generalization which leads to formulation of a concept. This concept can be in many forms, but it could be a theory, a principle, a policy, diba? So, yun yung sinasabi nating conceptual. So, these proven studies inanalyze and generalize to form another concept. But in empirical research, it relies on experience or observation alone, often without due regard for system and theory. It is data-based research coming up with conclusions which are capable of being verified by observation or experiment. So, empirical research, guys, it is an experimental type of research. So, walang masyadong kwenta yung previous yung previous studies, di ba? Yung previous studies, kukunin nyo lang yon para mapatunayan nyo na may ganito na palang klase ng study. Pero but the results are based from your observation, from the data gathered. So hindi yun pwedeng pakialamanan or hindi yun pwedeng maapektuhan ng mga ibang references. So kung ano lang yung nakuha doon sa practical observation, practical experiment, yun lang yung results. So kaiba with the conceptual. So in empirical, magbe-base ka lang, makakabuo ka lang ng concept, diba? After you have observed and you have analyzed the real data. Classification of types of research. So there are various types of research that are classified according to their objective, depth of studies, analyzed data, time required to study, and the phenomenon and other factors. So these are we have 7 classification of research. Diba? First, according to purpose. Second, according to depth of scope. Third, according to type of data used. 4, according to degree of manipulation. 5, according to type of inference. 6, according to type of which it is carried out. And 7, according to sources of information. Now, we will be discussing the first classification of research according to purpose. So, it is divided into 2, theoretical research and applied research. So, theoretical research, it referred as pure or basic research, focuses on generating knowledge regardless of its practical application. So in theoretical research, guys, from existing data, from existing knowledge, diba, bubuo yung mga researchers ng panibagong knowledge, or diba, mag-a-analyze sila ng mga data and they will make a conclusion, a generalization to form another concept, another theory or application or principle, diba? Kahit wala siyang paggamitan, yung knowledge na nagamit, yung knowledge or yung concept na na-formulate nila, na-develop nila, ay mostly walang paggagamitang application. It's just pure knowledge. Kaya nga siya theoretical. Pag sinabi naman nating applied research, yung mga results, conclusions, or data na nakuha or nagather in this research will be used to form what? It could be policies na gagamitin talaga in the society. It could be used para makabuo ng mga inventions, diba? So, in education naman, paano natin to may a-apply? So, sa applied research, nabanggit natin kanina, yung mga interventions na ginagamit, yung mga instruments na ginagamit, na talagang may apply mo in reality. Pag theoretical naman in education, ay yung hindi pa nararanasan sa education, hindi pa siya phenomena, pero what ifs, diba? And in theoretical research, gagawa sila ng, or magde-develop sila ng knowledge para masagot yung theoretical question na what if in education. So I will be discussing the classification according to depth of scope. So we have 4 here. Pero ang i-discuss ko muna ay yung unang dalawa, which is the descriptive research and correlational research. So what is descriptive? So na-discuss na natin to kanina. Descriptive is just to describe a phenomena based on the perceptions of the participants or the subjects or the respondents, diba? So, chine-check dito yung cause and effect nung phenomena na yon in the perspective of the subjects. So, the researcher must take particular care not to intervene in the observed object or phenomenon. So, dapat hindi pakialamanan ng researcher yung phenomena. Kumbaga, kung nag-respond kung checklist yung naging answer, data gathering procedure, dapat hindi mag-check or gumawa ng sariling data yung researcher, kasi hindi magiging valid yung description ng phenomena. That is what we call descriptive research. Next is correlational research. Dito naman, the purpose of this type of scientific research is to identify the relationship between two or more variables. So, in correlational research, guys, chine-check yung relationship ng dalawang variables. For example, yung motivation ba, kapag mataas pa ang motivation, is tataas rin ba yung academic achievement? Or kapag mababa ba yung motivation, is bababa rin ba yung academic achievement? Or kapag mataas yung academic achievement, pwedeng mababa yung motivation. Ibig sabihin, kahit demotivated sila, pwede pa rin tumaas yung grade nila. O kaya kahit mataas yung motivation nila, pero mababa pa rin yung academic achievement. Right? Nagigets nyo? Dito, chine-check yung relationship ng two variables. Bigay pa tayo other examples. For example, kung mataas ka sa math, mataas ka rin ba sa science? May relationship ba yon? Or directly related pa sila? Or pwede namang mataas ka nga sa science pero mababa ka sa math. So, they are not related to each other. That is correlation. So, we have two types of research in this also. So, explanatory and exploratory. So, explanatory research, it is the most common type of research method and is responsible for establishing cause and effect relationships that allow generalizations to extend to similar realities. Okay. For example, there is a reality. Ano ba yung reality? In education, difficulties in science, for example. So, in explanatory research, the researchers will be making, diba? Will be conducting research para i-explain yung phenomena na yon. Bakit nahihirapan ang mga estudyante sa science? For example is, kasi nga mahina sila sa math. I-explain naman nila bakit mahina ang mga estudyante sa math. Then, magkakaroon na ng other researchers kung ano ba yung mga factors bakit mahina sa math. Okay, next naman is, dahil hindi sila familiar with science vocabularies. So, magkakandak yung researchers ng ano nga ba yung mga, bakit mahina yung mga students with science vocabularies, ano yung mga factors na nakaka-affect sa science vocabularies, ano yung mga dapat gawin sa science para magampanan tong science or ma-resolve tong science vocabularies problems. So, yung tinatawag nating explanatory, they tried to explain the phenomena from general to specific to its roots. And mostly, yung results na yon can be used across the disciplines. For example, nung una sa science, pwede yon, yung results in science pwedeng ma-apply siguro sa math, diba? Sa other subjects as well. Okay. So, yung tinatawag natin explanatory. Next, pag sinabi naman natin exploratory, ito yung mga types ng research na hindi pa nagagawan ng research before. For example, napakabago para sa education yung hugot line, 'di ba? Wala pang gumagamit ng hugot line. So, the researchers could try to conduct ano nga bang effects ng hugot line, ano ba yung magiging impact nun towards the studies, or ano ba yung effect nun sa pagbabago or pag-evolve ng linguistics, 'di ba? So, yun yung tinatawag nating exploratory. They tried to explore yung mga phenomena na hindi pa nag-exist or hindi pa nagagawa ng research. Pero nag-exist na sila sa environment. Next classification is according to the type of data used. So, na-discuss ko naman na yung to kanina. It is about qualitative and quantitative research. So, in qualitative research, guys, it is subjective. 'Di ba? Kasi not all data can be controlled. Kung ano yung sasabihin ni participant or ni respondent, yun yung magiging data mo verbatim. Okay? Mostly in qualitative, it is all about why, 'di ba? Bakit nangyari yung phenomenon na yun. Hindi masyado sa how. It is not about cause and effect. Mostly why lang talaga. And all of the answers has a linguistic symbiotic basis. Okay? And it is treated through discourse analysis, thematic analysis, diba? Could be in the form of records, interviews, and yun, linguistic data. Next naman sa quantitative research naman, it is about the cause and effect. It tackles about cause and effect, and all of the data were numeric, and ginagamitan to ng statistical tools or mathematical models. So, lahat ng data na magagather in quantitative or objective, hindi kontrolado, so ng researcher and ng respondents. Okay, so yun yung, and pwede palang makapag-form ng conclusions in quantitative research. Okay. So yun yung kaibahan niya sa qualitative. So next classification is according to the degree of manipulation of variables. So the term manipulation, the researchers tried to manipulate the variables. Okay. So it is classified into three: experimental research, quasi-experimental, and non-experimental research. So let's first discuss the experimental research. Dito sa experimental research, guys, ito yung method na ginagamit ng mga researcher to manipulate one variable lang, and control the rest of the variables. Okay. The process, treatment, and program in this type of research are also introduced, and the conclusion is observed. Okay. So, paano ba kinakandak itong experimental? It is conducted through scientific method. So, ang purpose nito is to predict the phenomenons. Okay. So, importante ito para malaman natin yung causation. Ma-explain natin yung causation, diba, ng mga phenomena. So, para malaman natin yung cause and effect, yung outcome. Next is quasi-experimental. Dito naman sa quasi-experimental, i-divide ito sa two groups or three, depende sa researchers, diba? And ang mahalaga dito is there is a control group among the groups. Control group, tas yung isa experimental group 1 and experimental group 2, parang ganon. So sa control group, ang ginagawa nito is doing the phenomena on a standard basis. Pero sa experimental second group, pwedeng lagyan sila ng intervention, at sa third group is lagyan din ng intervention. Then based from the experiment, diba, malalaman kung there is a cause and effect na makikita in the experimental groups, and i-compare yon sa control groups kung may pinagkaiba ba yung result ng experimental and control group based from the treatments. Okay. For example, dito sa quasi experimental, ang intervention is pakikinig ng music habang nagre-review. For example, yung control group, wala silang music na pinakikinggan kasi yun yung standard na pagre-review ng mga estudyante, common standards ng pagre-review. Pero dito sa treatment A, experimental A, pinakinggan sila ng interested na nilang music, kanya-kanyang interest or personal interest na music. Sa treatment B or experimental B group, ang pinakinig sa kanila ay mga orchestral. Ngayon, i-check yung scores sa pre-test at post-test ng bawat grupo. After ma-check, titignan kung may difference ba yung pre-test at post-test score, kung mas tumaas ba yung scores ng post-test ng lahat ng grupo, at i-check yung pagkakaiba ng scores between the three groups, kung may pinagkaiba ba yung scores ng control dun sa experimental. Diba? Kung tumaas ba yung experimental dahil doon sa intervention or bumaba dahil doon sa intervention. So, yun quasi experimental. So, the same din to sa experimental group. Pero ang kaibahan lang dito kasi may control group tayong tinatawag. Sa experimental kasi, randomize sila. Kumbaga, lahat ng subjects ay pwedeng makaranas ng experimental treatment. Okay. Pag sinabi namang non-experimental research, observational study to. So, walang intervention na magaganap at hindi pwedeng makialam si researcher sa phenomena. So, i-observe niya lang, i-analyze niya lang kung ano ba yung nangyayari with that phenomena. Pero, limitado siya sa lahat ng actions. So, next classification of research is according to the type of inference. So, yung inference, guys, it is the conclusion based from an evidence or a reasoning or a past knowledge or past experiences. So, yun yung inference. So, there are three researches that is classified in this type. So, deductive, inductive, and hypothetical deductive. So, in a deductive research, reality is explained by general laws that point to certain conclusions. So, conclusions are expected to be part of the premise of the research problem and considered correct if the premise is valid and the inductive method is applied correctly. So, it could be done from general to specific. So, yung general laws, diba? From general laws, it will be explained specifically through different means. So, yung specified explanation could be done in experimental research, diba? Or through descriptive researches. Basta, ma-deduce lang yung concept into specific. Next is inductive. From your general observation, from the general observation of the researcher, he will make a generalization that could lead to theory or general concepts. So, kung ano yung mga napapansin niya, pwede niyang i-take note yon, then make a conclusion and make a general concept. Next is hypothetical deductive. So, ano ba tong hypothetical deductive? It is based on observing reality to make a hypothesis, then use deduction to obtain a conclusion, and finally, verify or reject it through experience. So, hindi ako masyadong familiar with hypothetical deductive, but it is parang experimental then. It is done through scientific method. Okay. At first, at the first process, kailangan makapag-create si researcher ng hypothesis. Diba? Yung hypothesis na yun, dapat falsifiable yon. Pag sinabi natin falsifiable, kumbaga, pwede siyang maging mali. For example, ng falsifiable statement, all swans are white. So, that is falsifiable kasi may black swan. So, hindi lahat ng swan ay white. For example, all males are matalino. So, falsifiable yun kasi may mga males naman na hindi katalinuhan. Parang ganon. So, yun yun. In forming a hypothesis, kailangan falsifiable yung statements. And using these statements, pwedeng i-test itong statements na to through observations only. Or pwede rin experimental. Through observations or experimental, and make a deduction out of it. So, next classification of research is according to the time in which it is carried out. So, it is divided into two, the cross-sectional study and the longitudinal study. Yung cross-sectional study, guys, ito yung type or a design na kung saan yung research ay kinonduct once lang in a certain period lang. Meanwhile, yung longitudinal study is kinonduct yung whole study in a longer period of time. Now, let's make an example. For example, yung variable natin is the factors. Hindi, number of dropouts. Okay. So, sa cross-sectional study, kung 2010 niya kinonduct yung study, that 2010 lang siya nag-conduct. Okay. Kaya yung phenomena that time is yun lang yung observe niya. For example, bakit nga ba nagda-drop yung estudyante noong 2010? Siguro kasi nagkaroon ng matinding pagbagyo, di ba? Kaya naapektuhan ang mga bukid ng mga estudyante. Okay. Kaya that time, mas maraming nag-drop para magbukid. Pero kung longitudinal study, for example, 10 years, ngayon, dami ng dropout. Okay. So, for example, 2001 to 2010, bakit ganito yung number ng dropouts noong 2001? Kasi, for example, mahal yung bilihin. Di ba? Sobrang taas ng bilihin that time. Kaya, hindi napag-aral ng mga magulang yung mga estudyante. Parang ganon. Then, pumasok yung 2003, bakit mas onti yung dropouts compared to the last 2 years? Kasi nga, mas naging stable yung market at mas nabigyan ng pansin ng mga magulang yung pagpasok ng mga bata. Next, dumating yung 2007. Bakit dumami ulit yung dropouts? Kasi nauso yung computer games, kaya ang daming bata na nalulong sa computer game addiction, kaya sila nag-drop out. Diba? And Noong 2010, bakit mas lumala yung dropouts? Parang ganon, yung sinasabi nating longitudinal studies. So, chine-check dito yung variable in numerous perspectives and settings. 'Di ba? Kasi yung settings naman guys, iba-iba yung setting in every year. For example, iba yung setting noong 2019 at 2020. Bakit maraming dropout noong 2019 at bakit maraming dropout noong 2020? Kasi noong 2020 is pandemic, di na sila nag-aral. Noong 2021 bumalik sila kasi sabi nila nasayang yung 2020 nila. Noong 2019 ba't sila nag-drop out? Kasi gusto lang nila mag-drop out, no particular reason. Ayun yung tinatawag natin longitudinal. So last classification is according to sources of information. So we have two researches under this classification, the primary research and the secondary research. So ang pinagkaiba lang naman dito guys, yung pinagkuhanan ng data, kung saan na-gather ng researchers yung data nila. Sa primary research, nakuha yung data sa population. Okay? Or sa experiments. Diba? Talagang real data to based on the treatment done by the researchers. For example, nag-survey si researcher or nagpa-exam, nagpa-test, or nag-interview siya. Diba? Talagang kinuha niya yung data on those subjects. Diba? But in secondary research, dito, kinumpile lang yung data based from the existing researches, diba? Existing references. Kumbaga, according to your statement of the problem, ito yung mga kukunin kong data based sa mga dati ng study. So, hindi ka kumuha sa tunay na tao. Kumbaga, doon lang sa references. Ayun yung tinatawag nating secondary data. So, that is the difference between the two. So, these are the references where I gathered all this information that I have discussed.